Welcome into the Full Tilt Devy podcast on the Full Tilt network of podcasts. Now for your host, Mr. John Arrington and Andy Starr.
What's up, guys? I'm your host, Dynasty Coach A. Like you said, John Arrington in real life, Dynasty Coach A on Twitter, and I'm joined by Andy at A Star. Is there no FF anymore? Did we lose the FF?
Lucas must have just. I mean, that'd be great if I could get at A Star, but I'm pretty sure that handle is taken by some jokester who's not me. But yeah, I'm at A Star FF.
So make sure you follow him there because he's been killing it with the reviews and the college Devy reviews and everything, and it's been pretty good. I think he had one this week. I didn't quite catch it. I don't know, but I don't think anyone really had any big games or anything like that. Right? So nothing to talk about.
There might have been a couple, 2 or 3, but I don't know. Maybe we'll talk about one today. I don't know if we'll have time.
Maybe. Quick intro before we get into the news and notes of the week. I am now 11-1 in my only C2C league, and I know that you guys don't care about my league, but hey, it's my first C2C league. I'm pretty proud of it.
I care about it. I think that's impressive.
Thank you. I don't know, we're starting to get into the bye weeks. I had 2 bye weeks last week, and they were pretty rough because I had Tucker and someone else. And now this week I have a couple other studs out on bye, and then I also lost Jalen Daniels possibly for the season. I think it's a little weird because they basically said that he was going to be out for the rest of the year, and then he came out on Twitter and pulled a J.K. Dobbins and was like, no, not so fast, boys. So I'm kind of hoping that he's right, but I think we've also seen sometimes these players can be a little more optimistic than they should be.
Yeah, for sure. Ohio State on bye this week is going to be a rough for a lot of C2C rosters, that's for sure. But yeah, tough for Jalen Daniels. We were just hyping him up last week, so it's too bad. But Jason Bean looked pretty good for Kansas last week. Unfortunately, they did lose, but still, Kansas, man, they keep covering. So good program there.
Yeah, which is weird to say. But all right, what about you? What do you have going on this week? Anything with your C2C teams?
Well, I mean, I've got like 10 of them, so some of them are good, some of them are bad. I tweeted out about Kamir DK on Wisconsin earlier today. I'm actually going to talk about it later today, but I'm starting him in a couple spots this week, so we'll get to that. But in my personal life, I was telling you guys behind the scenes here that I just got another Sphinx cat this week, which is pretty exciting for me. Might be lame to some people, but I like those things.
Now, what exactly makes it a Sphinx cat?
It's just like they're the hairless cats.
Oh, the hairless one. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard it called the Sphinx cat, but
I think
it makes sense.
that's what they're called apparently. So, but
I don't know
enough about Sphinx cats.
Exactly. All right, why don't we go ahead and get into some news and notes here? First of all, Texas had their savior come back in Quinn Ewers, and they destroyed a very, very worrisome program in Oklahoma. So what do you think about that? What do you think about Quinn Ewers coming back, and how did he look?
Yeah, first of all, I think it was a little sooner than we all originally had anticipated, which, that tends to happen with younger players. They healed from these injuries when they haven't, been through the rough and tumble as much as some of the more seasoned players. But yeah, good to get him back early. He picked up exactly where he left off from that Bama game. Shutout win, Red River Showdown. Obviously, that's one of the biggest rivalries in the country. He's been accurate. He's making throws downfield. He threw for 4 touchdowns last weekend. And yeah, like you said, Oklahoma is looking horrible here. They were without Dylan Gabriel, but when you lose 49-0, I don't think Dylan Gabriel is going to come in and make that game competitive.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it was brutal from the Sooners. And at this point, I think I've seen enough from Ewers just in the 2.5 games that he's played to where I can say that he's got, a bright NFL future, obviously. I'm also a little confident right now. I say a little because I'm just putting ahead by the slightest of margins ahead of Caleb Williams for my 2024 QB class. Ooh. And I mean, I've been seeing tweets all around Twitter this week. Guys are saying the 2024 QB class is better than 2023 class. I don't think that's a hot take. I think that that's probably true. I think we've seen the 2023 class kind of fall behind this year, aside from those top two guys. So for me, yeah, Caleb Williams, Quinn Ewers, they're both looking great. But I'm giving the slight edge to Ewers right now. He's just looked fantastic.
Yeah, but people probably would have said very similar things, or did say very similar things last year about this time, about DJU and Spencer Rattler and whoever the hell else, saying how great the 2023 class was going to be. So while I don't disagree with you, and everything is looking great for the QB class in 2024, I don't know that we can just sit here and bank on it either. But now I will say there's some people and some highly touted Devy analysts and C2C analysts that have now Quinn Ewers at 1 for their overall Devy QB ranks. What do you think about that? That's pretty spicy.
I'm of the belief at this point is, having playing Devy for, some time now, where I'm never confident in any quarterback. I can project more comfortably a wide receiver or a running back especially after watching them for 3 seasons than I can a quarterback, because you're always going to get Justin Fields and, even Trevor Lawrence to an extent, and other, Sam Howell. These guys were, first overall Devy picks at one point, Spencer Rattler too. So as much as I love Ewers, I don't think I'm comfortable enough taking a quarterback ever again as the 101 in Devy. So that's where I stand on that.
Yeah, I don't know if they actually moved him into 101, but they moved him into, QB1 on the list, which I still think is pretty spicy. What are we, 2.5 games into his career, basically? Like,
right.
I look at DJU. I mean, that's a perfect example. We had 4 games out of him, and then he just kind of fell apart. Now I don't think you can completely blame him, but at the same time, like, that team kind of fell apart more than anything else. But I also don't think he's quite the player that we thought he was either. So it's a little bit of both. I really like Ewers. I've moved him into my tier 2. I have him right in the same tier as like a Caleb Williams, like you were saying before. I have not moved him above Caleb Williams yet, but he's very close. And honestly, it could be one more game. Like, I really don't think it would be that insane or anything like that. But I just need to see a little bit more than just 2 games. As great as those games were. And I will say, I've talked about Jatavian Sanders in the past, and he brought Jatavian Sanders back to life. So I definitely love what he's doing. Although I would have liked to have seen a little bit more out of Xavier Worthy. I believe he got hurt, but I expected big things in year 2, and we haven't quite seen that just yet.
Yeah, he's been banged up the last couple of weeks, but yeah, like you said with Jatavian Sanders, Ewers has really been targeting him more than anyone else. And then as far as wide receivers, he's really been more fond of Whittington as opposed to Xavier Worthy, which I know is frustrating for some of us Devy guys, but I'm not worried about Worthy. I think he still has that big playability, which is really his calling card. So, as long as he can keep taking the tops off the defense, I'm not going to move him on my rankings too much.
No, I was probably too high on Worthy, and it was probably more on me than anything else. But I've moved him down a little bit, but he's still in the second tier. Like, I don't have him in like the top tier with your Amikas and Marvin Harrisons and all that kind of stuff. But like, he's right there, so it's not like it's doom and gloom or anything like that for him. Right. But then another major program has the injured Bryce Young, and Alabama struggled, at least offensively, against Texas A&M. Almost lost that game. Probably should have lost that game, but yet they squeak out a win. How vulnerable do you think they're going to be this week against a pretty good Tennessee offense?
Yeah, and I know Lucas is pumped about talking about Tennessee. But just to go back to that last week's game, the Aggies had them 2-yard line with 2 seconds to go, but Bama was able to stop it from that go-ahead touchdown. And I was reading somewhere that the corner who broke up that pass knew that the play was going to go to Evan Stewart. He said he read Jimbo Fisher's lips on the sideline and knew that the play was going there. So if that's true, another blemish on the season for Jimbo,
wow,
who you have to believe is on like the hottest of hot seats right now. And Matt Rule just got fired from the Panthers, so I know he's going to be itching to get back into the college game. And if Texas A&M opens up, Like he's basically going to have his pick of where he wants to go. I think that would be a great fit. But beside the point there, that's huge speculation. But yeah, Bama obviously without Bryce Young, and that cannot be understated. But moreover, I think the offense as a whole has been flat when Young even is on the field. As we've seen with the wide receivers, there really hasn't been like an elite playmaker out of that group. I think they probably lose to Texas if Ewers didn't get hurt. Even with Milroe, there's no excuse for almost losing to Haynes King in this Aggie team that lost to App State earlier in the year. And you're playing at home at Bryant-Denny Stadium. So this game should not have been close. Similar to like, Dylan Gabriel being out, the game still shouldn't have been 49-0. With Bryce Young still out, this game still should have been, much more in Bama's favor. And then like we talked about earlier, they're getting probably the hottest team in college football right now and Lucas's Volunteers. And you got to go to their house to play them too, which is going to be tough. I talked about it on the Devy recap a little bit, how good Hendon Hooker has been this season. He's one of only 3 QBs left to not have an interception on the season. Jabari Small is an NFL caliber running back, in my opinion. Cedric Tillman, Jalen Hyatt, and Brew McCoy are the best 3-wide set in the SEC. I don't think that's a hot take. I think that's pretty obvious. And they're getting 7.5 points at home from Vegas. So I know the Bama defense has some of the best players in the country. I'm not surprised in the slightest if Tennessee goes out and wins here. At the same time, this feels like one of those Bama moments where they're on the ropes and then they come out and destroy a team in what was supposed to be a close game. Saban can do that at any moment without warning. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think they're very, very vulnerable here. I think this could be a losing week for them.
I completely agree, and if anything, makes you realize, if you didn't already know, how good Bryce Young is. And also, if you had any hope that it was going to be Milroe next year, I think you should probably start investing in some Ty Simpson shares, or if they're going to bring in another prospect or whatever. I don't think it's going to be Milroe. I mean, the dude is definitely an athlete, and he can move, but I mean, we've said it over and over again on the spot, like, you got to be able to throw too, and he just doesn't quite have that.
Yeah, I saw him compared to Anthony Richardson more than a couple times over the weekend. So it's the same thing. Like, he can run, but he can't throw.
Yeah, so actually it's pretty apt as a comparison there. But and yeah, I definitely this is going to be a fun game to watch. We might even talk about a certain player to watch a little bit later on. But yep, it's gonna be fun. I think I'm with you though. Bama tends to step up in these kind of situations and everything, but it is going to be one of those things where can the Bama defense keep that Tennessee offense in check, and that's going to be Lucas is freaking out in the background here. He's talking about Rocky Top and all this other stuff.
Y'all hear those banjos playing, right?
My
Y'all hear
goodness.
them? It's really funny that Dixieland Delight is a song they think's about Alabama, but really is about Tennessee. I'm just going to throw that out there as well. Go Vols. Vols by 50.
By 50. Woo! I love the optimism there. And then, honestly, I think that's it for the news and notes. I don't really think there was anything else we needed to talk about.
No?
I don't know. Okay, so we'll go ahead and was there something else you want to talk about?
Well, there was a small running performance in the ACC over the weekend. I guess there was this guy they were mentioning, Tony Dorsett. I don't know if he's any good, but apparently his single game program record was broken by somebody named Israel Abana. I don't know if I'm saying this right. Abanaconda? Is that right?
Ooh, I don't think I've heard of him before, no.
I mean, I'd hate to just say that he was horrible after 1 week of the season, but no, I had to put this on the show sheet to give you a hard time because the 300 game is just ridiculous. I will say in your defense that he did have a horrible week 1 and he was outclassed by Rodney Hammond, and Hammond hasn't played since that game, and he might be back this week. So we'll see what that does to his workload, because I don't know how many 25 plus carry games he's going to have with Hammond back. He had 3 out of 5 of the last games at over 25 carries. But I will take a small victory lap for the 300 yards, 6 touchdown game. So I'm not running circles or anything around you, but I gotta at least throw a little bit at you.
No, I appreciate that, and honestly, I mean, rightfully so. With that kind of game, trust me, I had a league mate in my C2C team that had Abanaconda on his team, and I said, well, that's a shit pick. And of course he had to jump into the chat on Saturday and tell, mention how wrong I was and all that kind of stuff. But like you said, I think, and I think you even mentioned it on the recap, how it's obviously an amazing feat. And I mean, to break Tony Dorsett's record is amazing. Like, I'm not truly trying to take anything away from it, but you see that the big games have kind of been more, I mean, besides this one was just wild, but the rest of his games have been more like volume driven than like amazing play driven. 36 carries here, 29 carries there, like that kind of thing. And he's kind of fallen off in certain just random games, like last week when he only had 30 yards rushing. And so, the other player coming back is kind of interesting. I guess I just kind of want to see him continue on and continue to be able to do it. But I think you had mentioned, you could see him being like a third or like a fourth or fifth round pick, something like that. So you're not calling for him to be a first round pick all of a sudden or something like that. So I feel like you're lapping, but you're doing it realistically and in the right way. And right. So I'm with you. Like he's obviously moved up with these kind of performances for me, and I was too low on him, but I don't think he's going to be much more than like a fourth round pick or something like that when it's all said and done. If he even comes out, we don't even truly know if he's going to come out this year. He doesn't have like the greatest track record or anything to go to the NFL besides the fact that he broke Tony Dorsett's record. But why don't we look at the clip real quick and see what he did, because it was an amazing feat.
If we're doing a week 6 recap, I got to talk about my guy Israel Abanaconda. He took Virginia Tech for 320 yards and 6 touchdowns, much to the chagrin of my co-host, John Arrington, who tried to victory lap him being a bust after week 1. Since that time, he's had over 130 yards and a touchdown in 4 out of the 5 games. And in the last 3 games, he has over 500 yards and 10 touchdowns. This running back class is absolutely loaded, as I've said before. I think Izzy might be wise to stay another season. But if he does come out, I think we got to start talking about him as a potential late day 2 pick, probably early day 3. But still, games like that, big games over 300 yards don't come by too often. So well done, Izzy Abanaconda.
I should have been paying attention more, because I thought that Lucas Many had a highlight clip, but he was talking about the Devy recap. But definitely check out the recap. It's been great to watch, and you get a lot of great points. Like if you didn't watch a 300-yard game by Izzy here, then you would know that he broke some records. Anything else to say about Izzy before we take a little break and get on to the good stuff?
No, that's it. I will just say those Devy recaps, though, I keep them short. They're only like four minutes, real quick. Just, pump them out. It's a quick watch and move on with your day.
Alrighty. So the main event for this week is going to be a halfway point reevaluation. We're at the midway point of the season, and we want to look back and just kind of see, who was too high, who was too low. Now I took this I kind of challenged myself on this one. I see who you have, and so I'm going to like throw down my sword and let you take on this player. But I challenge myself to not talk about a player that I've talked about before in the pod, because I feel like sometimes I get stuck on the same players over and over again just because I feel strongly one way or the other about them. And so I wanted to talk about players that I really haven't talked about or possibly haven't even talked about at all. And so that's what I'm going to do. But basically, we are looking at players that were in the top 50 Devy ADP from campustocanton.com. And we're picking one player that was too high and one player that was too low. Why don't you go ahead and start with your too high, and then I'll surprise you with mine as well.
Yeah, and I kind of like that idea. And the guy I took for too high was Tank Bixby. I feel like I haven't talked about him too much. And John, I know that you're probably more anti-Bixby than I am. But I just can't believe this guy is still getting drafted as a second round Devy pick. And that's based on a C2C midseason mock that was completed earlier this week. Granted, that's only one guy who picked him, but still. And also, based on some of those 2023 rookie mocks we were hearing on some other pods last year, he's still getting taken in the late first, early second in some places in those drafts. But since we're here to talk about preseason ranks, I'll just say that his ADP in the summer was 13. So the 201, he was RB6 off the board. Here's just a sampling of other running backs in the top 50 that were taking after him. You had, and this is after him, so people valued him more than these players earlier this year. Nick Singleton, Will Shipley, Sean Tucker, Rocket Sanders, and Blake Corum. That's just running backs. And then other positions that were behind him, wide receivers, you had Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka, Josh Downs, and you had both of the tight ends, Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers behind him. I think he was rightfully taken before all QBs not named Ewers, Caleb, Williams, and then Stroud and Bryce Young. But I already kind of told you that was going to happen. Don't draft mid-round QBs in Devy. It's a losing game. But back to my point, Bixby is just sunk cost at this point. That was just a handful of guys who are behind him that have skyrocketed in front of him, in my opinion. He's really just a one-dimensional runner, as one-dimensional as you can get. I know there's the old joke. They used to say it with LeGarrette Blount when he was the Lions. If you need 2 yards, Blunt's going to get you 3 yards. And if you need 5 yards, he'll get you 3 yards. That's what Tanks Bixby is. Completely ineffective after the first level. He does have 15 catches on the season, but that is a mirage. His ADOT is -2 yards, meaning I believe he has even one target that wasn't a screenplay. And he still only manages to catch less than 70% of those targets. I said on last week's mock draft where we all faded him, if this guy didn't go by the name Tank, if he went by like his given name of Cartavius, I don't even think we're talking about him at all. I think people just get excited about, oh, look, this guy's a tank. Look at that. But I mean, that's speculation, but I believe it to be true. If we step back and look at his season and you take away that week 1 game against Mercer, it's Mercer. Of course, he's going to run all over them. He currently has 63 carries for 201 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is a whopping 3.2 yards per carry. I think he's bad. I don't think you should draft him. And if you have him, I think you need to trade him right now.
Man, that is music to my ears. I at first I saw it on the show sheet and I felt like, I don't know, betrayed. How can you take my guy that I always talk about and that I hate with a passion? But I feel like you did it justice and you did it right. There's really nothing else to add here. But I will say it was wild after week 1, after that Mercer game, how many people were the RB2 in the class, this and that. It was so crazy. Don't worry about last year. Don't worry about all the other games that we've seen. No, the game against Mercer, that's when we knew that he was going to be just so good. And I think I heard on a different pod, and I could be very wrong, but I want to say that he hasn't surpassed 100 yards at any point, or only one time this season, and maybe only like one time in the past like 12 games or something like that. So I mean, it's pretty wild when you think
that would have been
it.
Mercer,
and that was Mercer exactly. Yeah. So I even heard recently that some people are speculating that he might not even come out at this point, and I mean I guess it's definitely possible, but I don't know. It's not like he's going to get better, so it seems to make more sense for him just to come out and just do what he's going to do, unless he's going to transfer and try to get into a better offensive line or something like that. But
yeah, we'll see.
So like I said, I wanted to challenge myself and talk about somebody I really haven't talked about before, and that when we're only talking about the top 50 players, and I didn't want to kind of only talk about like a QB that's not on the field, like a Devin Brown or somebody like that. Like I didn't want to just take the easy way out. It did get kind of difficult, but I'm going to talk about Jaden Blue. I think the biggest thing is, yep, I'm going to look here.
Okay.
I kind of expected the look. But I think the biggest thing is that he was being drafted as the 27th overall player. Sorry, I had to make my screen a little bigger for a second. And I mean, obviously we knew he wasn't going to be much of anything this year, but I mean, that's not the end of the world in Devy. But I think the biggest thing for me is he was listed as 205 pounds, looking at like 24/7 or On3 or one of those sites. And then he gets to Texas and all of a sudden he's 190 pounds on the Texas website. And that is probably bigger than he actually is. Like if the Texas website is saying 190, he's probably 185. And, when you consider he's 5'11" and a half or whatever, that's at least the size that they're saying he is, it's just not ideal. Now the talent is there. I think he's good, although he got some run in this last game and he had 5 carries for 14 yards. Not saying it's the end of the world or anything like that, but he did have one big play. He had a 10-yard run, and then he had 4 runs that went for 4 more yards. So it just doesn't really add up to like an amazing game or anything like that. But I think for me, it's just more if he's that much smaller than we were originally thinking, what are the odds that he's going to be able to get up to a 210, 220, 215 at the very least, like where we really want him to be. I don't think he's a Jahmyr Gibbs level player to where we can be like, all right, screw the size. He's just that damn good. He's that damn explosive. Maybe he is, but I think 27 was a bit much. And, when we're talking about all the other players like Rocket Sanders that was 2 spots behind him, Michael Mayer, let's see, Ja'Cory Brooks and Mika Egbuka, like Evan Stewart, all these players going behind him that we could have drafted instead of drafting like a question mark and a small question mark at that. Now, I'm not saying he's terrible. I'm not saying you shouldn't have drafted him, but doesn't 27 seem a little high to you?
Yeah, and I think, we're using Campus to Canton's rankings, and I think that those rankings do get pumped up a little bit by the people at their website, and Jaden Blue was very high on a lot of people that work over there, and for, legitimate reasons, but I think you do bring up a great point because obviously with running back, the biggest thing we can look at, unobjectively is their height and weight. And if they don't meet certain thresholds, you just know right off the get-go that they're not going to be an NFL running back unless they're like, generational receiving back, like as Christian McCaffrey or, potentially Jahmyr Gibbs or Alvin Kamara. So yeah, I think you do bring up a good point. And I didn't even think of that. Typically I see a freshman in Devy rankings, and if they don't play, I just sort of give them the benefit of the doubt. But I haven't really been paying attention to that information. So, you're telling me now that he's listed 190 on Texas's website. I didn't know that. And given that information, I think that's honestly a great point because BMI does matter for running backs, especially a guy like Jaden Blue, who I don't think anyone's expecting him to come out and just be like the next Christian McCaffrey or Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, and you probably know more about recruiting and all that than I do, or pay attention to it a little more than I do. But I believe they also brought in another 5-star running back for next year, or possibly even multiples. Like I know they've been recruiting like crazy, so it's not even a given that he's just going to all of a sudden have the full workload next year either. Obviously this is kind of hindsight bias because I know more now than we did in July. I'm not even 100% sure that anyone in July would have known this, but I just, that's the whole point is we're doing the midseason review. We're looking back and saying, hey, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? And I didn't draft any of them. I'm only in one Devy league and one C2C league, so didn't have too many options, but I didn't draft any of them. But I definitely, looking back, think that he would have been overdrafted, and I'm glad that I didn't, really.
Yeah, I do have one Jaden Blue share, and I just sort of fell into that one because he was falling a lot further than where his ADP was, so I was like, I'll just take a shot on him here. But yeah, I was never really too high on him either. Just because, like I said, the C2C guys were high on him, but I like to look at the recruiting services more for their rankings. I feel like 247 and On3 have been doing it a lot longer. And 247 in particular wasn't as high on Jaden Blue as as a lot of people, granted they were higher on Emmanuel Henderson, who's not even a running back anymore, but
Right.
so you got to take everything with a grain of salt. That's why recruiting is really like trying to figure that stuff out is really difficult. It's much easier once they start playing games. So, but you brought up a good point, and we'll see what happens now after Bijan obviously goes pro this year. Maybe Roshan Johnson stays another year at Texas, and he's obviously been outplaying Jaden Blue because he's actually playing games. So if that happens, then it's another year where Jaden Blue's not getting, as big of workload as we'd want to see.
Exactly, and Emmanuel Henderson's another small back that it is probably converting to wide receiver because they're like, yeah, dude, you're 175 pounds. Like this isn't gonna work. Like we can do a lot of things at Bama. We cannot make you a running back. I'm sorry. All right, so you're too high on Tank. Or you think that people were too high on Tank. Who do you think people were too low on in July or in the summer?
So I'm going against what you said now in that I'm talking about somebody I talk about all the time, and it's Nicholas Singleton. And I'm going to continue to shout it from the rooftops because I still think he's getting disrespected. I have him right now, and this is probably a little hot takey, but I have him above Travion Henderson for me in my Devy rankings. I think he's tremendous after contact. He's got almost 5 yards created per attempt after contact. 67% of his yards are breakaway yards. He leads all 2025 eligible running backs who have at least 50 PPR points in rush yards over expected per attempt at 2.03, which is a crazy high number for that metric. He's behind only Jaden Ott, who I also love, and Quinshon Judkins, another guy that I think is still severely underrated. He's only behind those two guys in yards per team play for the 2025 class. My only complaint so far is his lack of usage in the passing game. I'm going to just put the blinders on for right now and give it a pass. I think that's going to definitely improve when Drew Aller takes the offense over next year. But to relate it to this topic, his preseason ADP was still very high at 14, which was RB7. But tell me, like right now, after 6 weeks, I think we would all rather have Singleton over guys like Kayshon Boutte, Zach Evans, probably Xavier Worthy, definitely Tank Bixby, definitely Braylon Allen, maybe even JSN. I don't know. That's probably a little too much, but that's almost half the guys that were taken in front of him that I think, at this point we can say Singleton is, a safer bet than those guys.
Yeah, I like it. I actually have him ahead of Ott, but it's very close. Like they might as well be tied. So
yeah.
Both of them are having an amazing freshman season, and Judkins as well. Although he's splitting time, so I don't know that Judkins has the opportunity to be as good as those two can be. Although he's looking pretty damn good. But I know you talked about Zach Evans recently, but I've been kind of going back and forth with people because I feel like he's just getting a complete pass. Like people are just like, oh, it doesn't matter. Like we know he's good, like that kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, let's see it. Let's see it. Either he has a bad attitude, he doesn't care, or he's hurt. Like I've heard, people saying he's hurt. What you were talking about how he came out and said, like I'm just not going to play, or I don't want to play as much, or whatever he said. Like I don't know. It all seems really weird. And then everyone's like, oh, not everyone, but a lot of people are still like, oh yeah, he's my running back 3 in the class. And I'm just like, no, we've seen other people like be really good. Why are we not going to move those guys above the guy that's like, oh, I don't want to play football?
Right. No, and we did get some pushback on that. When we posted our mock draft results. And I think you're absolutely right. Like he sort of built in that excuse, which people are leaning on, like, oh, I want to prepare for the NFL. I don't want a full workload. But has he ever had a full workload? I don't think so. He's never proved that he can take over the backfield. Last year with Kendre Miller, was much more efficient than he was. So,
yep.
Yeah, I'm with you, but it's at the same time, I don't want to miss out on like a starting NFL running back potentially for the next 5 seasons just because he didn't play that much in college, because that's also possible. He's super, super athletic. He's super great carrying the rock when he does do it.
I actually want to make sure that I need to double check this because I have him listed as 195 pounds. Is that right, Evans?
No, I don't think so. There's two Zach Evans in college football, and they're both running back.
Yeah.
One of them is on Minnesota. So, Ole Miss guy, I think he's 215.
No, he's. I probably need to go to Ole Miss's website because College Football Reference has him as 5'11", 195.
No, he's 6 feet, 215, according to. I'm on ESPN right now.
Okay, all right. So I need to change that. That's actually probably why he's a little bit lower for me because, once again, I don't like the 195-pound running backs, but that's weird that College Football Reference has him that low. But enough about Zach Evans. That wasn't the point of the show. We just went off on a little tangent like we tend to do. But I also think it's important to talk about because I've seen a lot of mock drafts. We were not the only ones that decided to do a mock draft even that day, much less that week. And so I ended up listening to a lot of them. And not to say that we're the best, but man, we're the best. Like some of those drafts were just bad. Like take Bixby in the 6th overall, and it's like nothing's changed since your opinion from July. We have to actually watch football, look at numbers, however you do it. I'm not telling you how to do it. I'm just telling you that you need to change your opinion when you see other things change.
Is this where I take my victory lap on Quentin Johnston? Is that now?
All right, so that's another thing. We can go off on another tangent here. We're off the rails now, but I've also heard a lot of victory lapping on Quentin Johnston, not just from Lucas, although he did bring it up a couple times in the chat, but we're just going to completely ignore the other 4 games. Like those 4 games do not matter. Only this game against a bad defense.
200 yards go vroom vroom. It's like yes. That was awesome, though.
No, it was a good game. Lucas, what do you want to talk about?
Oh, nothing. I just wanted to bring it up because I felt like after that draft, that was my worst pick in terms of just overall looking at everyone else's drafts and just kind of how it was, generally perceived. But man, I think you all absolutely crushed those drafts looking at what the performances have been up to this point, and then also just seeing what the feedback's been on Twitter, on our YouTube, on our Instagram. Lots of good things. So y'all absolutely crushed it. Although I think Andy had a little bit of a head start. It helps to have Bijan Robinson on your team.
I mean, you gave me the 101. I'm not gonna fumble the ball at the 1 yard line. I got to take the points there.
Yeah, you're not the Denver Broncos,
right?
Yeah, but obviously it was great to see. Even when I said at the beginning of the season or in the offseason that Quentin Johnston was going to lose value, and Andy told me that was a wild take and spicy and all that kind of stuff, I never said that he was terrible. I never said that he couldn't have a good game or something like that. So I didn't even expect him to be this bad or be as bad as he was. So it's good to see, but one game doesn't make up for 4 games unless they can come out and say, oh, he had turf toe or something like that. But he was on the field. So whenever I see a player on the field, I just assume that they're at least healthy enough. Unless it's one game and you can clearly see they're just a decoy, that kind of thing. I don't think that was the case. We'll just have to see because I was with Andy before when he said that, he really thought he was going to transfer and stay another year. Maybe if he continues on this way, then he can get back into the draft capital talk and all that kind of stuff. But definitely not in my top 5 by any means right now.
No.
So let's talk about my player that I think people were too low on, and I forgot to write it down, but I know I can find it pretty quickly. Oh. So we just got done talking, or not just got done, but we were talking earlier about how bad Oklahoma is, especially without Dylan Johnson or Dylan Gabriel. I think that Marvin Mims has stood out though. Even though the offense hasn't been amazing or anything like that. We talked about him last week on the pod in the draft and everything, but I just think that he was going at 50th overall in July. And so, just barely squeak it in there. And I just think that he was a question mark after his sophomore season, but everything that he's done so far this year before this game where we had the backup quarterback that couldn't do anything and they scored 0 points on offense shows that he's at least needs to be talked about in draft talks and things like that. I think he's going to be drafted by the NFL. He's going to get at least decent draft capital, that kind of thing. Hopefully, if they can get their starting QB back and they can right that ship, then we can see him have a bunch more of these big games that he's had to start the season off. But player 50 overall in Devy, going behind players like Cade Klubnik, Devin Akane, Adam Randall, Keon Grays, Parker Washington. We've talked about like Cameron Ward, Anthony Richardson, Tyler Van Dyke. That's just the list directly in front of them. I'm sure there's some other players that I could say like, well, really, like Quentin Johnston. No. But I just think that it was just too low. And I was lower on Mims because of his sophomore season, but I still had him higher than 50th overall when it was all said and done.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I didn't realize his ADP had fallen that much. I know in drafts I was in this offseason, he was going late third round, early fourth, I want to say. But yeah, I think he's definitely going to be a guy that in your dynasty leagues, he's going to be a second round draft pick, assuming he comes out this year. I think the wide receiver class has struggled enough this year to where a guy like Mims can comfortably come out and get some decent draft capital. So yeah, I'm with you there. I think he's gonna be a early to mid second round draft pick in drafts come this April. So, if you got a guy like that after the fourth round in your Devy draft last year, that's a huge victory for sure.
Absolutely. And that's why I think that he was a good pick here. And hey, I didn't talk about a lot of the guys that I always like to talk. I didn't talk about Blake Corum, believe it or not.
When you said Marvin, I was like, is he going to say Marvin Harrison? Because that would have been fun too. But all the Marvins are.
It's definitely possible. Although, maybe not in July, but closer to the start of the season, he started getting some hype. I don't even know if you could have been too low on him. And also, honestly, like I feel like he's getting a little too much hype right now.
I've seen him like put in the top 5 of Devy rankings right now. I'm not even sure he's like, is he better than Emeka Egbuka? I don't know. But I think both those guys are great.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't know. People just hate Egbuka for some reason. I don't get it. It's like I saw something earlier, and it was Harrison was, like you said, top 5 in Devy, and then I think Egbuka was like 13th or something like that. And I'm like, but why? I don't understand.
Right. I'll just take Egbuka. It's cheaper.
Exactly. All right, well, we've gone a little long here, not too bad, but let's go ahead and take a little break, and then when we get back, we'll get into our Week 7 predictions.
The Seahawks are a better offense.
Yes.
I think they're an offense that is good enough that these defenses that want to focus on a player aren't going to focus on it. If they came out next week, say the Raiders came out after the Texans bye, and they all focused on Pierce, it's probably not going to be the best. But if they build their plan around stopping Walker, then Metcalf and Lockett are going to burn them. I think that team is just going to be inherently better, and because of that, I'm going to bet on Kenneth Walker because I think they're going to have similar workloads.
That's fair.
Don't send first for Dameon Pierce. Don't do it.
I was like, I hope they told that guy no.
We've just seen it too often. People fell in love with J-Rob, and then they drafted ETN. People fell in love with Michael Carter, and then they drafted Breece Hall. And it's going to probably see the same exact thing happen, or a very similar situation happen here with Dameon Pierce. It doesn't mean they can't be good. It's just not players that I want to give a first up for. Find a way, do a second in a player or whatever. You can make it happen without giving up that, amazing 23 first pick. But why don't we go ahead and get into the Week 7 predictions? But first, let's go. Oh, and all my lights just went off, so that's pretty cool. First, let me turn on some lights, if I can.
Hurricane Ian 2.0.
Yeah, right? No, I don't know why. Oh, you know what? I bet my wife...
You forgot to pay the bill, huh?
I bet my wife messed with my lights, or one of my kids. All my lights are on... voice recognition, and so sometimes my kids will say the wrong thing and they'll turn off my bedroom lights. So we are back. Sorry about that. But before we get into the Week 7 predictions, why don't we go ahead and talk about Underdog Fantasy? The NFL season is underway, and you can still draft a new fantasy team each week on Underdog Fantasy to win cash prizes. Through their slick mobile app and user-friendly site, you can join a league and draft a team in just minutes. Plus, the folks at Underdog are going to help you get started with a deposit match of up to $100 in bonus cash when you sign up and make your first deposit with the promo code FULLTILT. So just visit UnderdogFantasy.com, the App Store or the Google Play Store. Sign up with the code FULLTILT, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code FULLTILT. Check it out. Let's dive into some Week 7 predictions. Unfortunately, we did not do Week 6 predictions because we kind of had a long draft pod last week, so we don't have anything to go off of there or talk about. But what are you thinking for a game against the spread here for Week 7?
So first of all, I just want to say there's some absolutely massive games this week. I think this is probably the most exciting week of college football yet this year. Couple battles of the undefeateds. A few of them actually. Penn State at Michigan, Oklahoma State at TCU, and then of course Bama at Tennessee, which we talked about earlier. I really like Tennessee plus 7.5 at home, but it's never wise to bet against Bama, so I'm staying away there. So I'm going to go to my bread and butter, and that is the Big Ten. Back to my what's the spread days, and I'm taking the homer pick. I'm going with my Badgers to cover 7.5 on the road against Michigan State, who has been just awful this year. They have no pass rush, and their coverage is somehow even worse, which obviously spells disaster. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, Andy. It's the Badgers. They don't throw the ball. I hear you, but I'm here to tell you that they have been pretty darn good at throwing the ball this year. Graham Mertz, who we all know is not an NFL quarterback, so don't try to twist my words here. But he's actually strung together a pretty efficient season, 9 yards per attempt, adjusted completion at 73%. 13 touchdowns already this season to only 5 interceptions. 13 touchdowns is more than he's ever had in a complete season, and it's only Week 7. He's throwing the ball downfield with an ADOT of 11.1, and I think a lot of that has to do with a guy I mentioned earlier in the Today Show, and that's Kamir DK, who I tweeted about earlier this week. I don't know if he's in your model, John. You can see how he stacks up this year, but he's hitting all those important metrics. He's a yak monster. The pass volume wasn't there initially, but in the last 2 weeks, they're averaging over 30 pass attempts per game. Mertz is playing safe with the football. He's not turning the ball over. He's got a slot monster in DK. Give me Wisconsin passing offense to lead them to a blowout victory on the road against a horrible Michigan State team.
All right, so this is interesting because usually you write your stuff down and then I try to surprise you with my picks, but I picked the same game. I just think, we're like you said, there's a lot of good games, but not necessarily a lot of games that I would want to bet on or that I can guarantee are going to go one way or the other, or even just covering and that kind of thing. But I looked at that game, and Michigan State has been so bad. They're 122nd in the nation against the pass. Like it's not going to be good. And what is it? What's the line? 7.5. Like it's not. It's not going to end well for Michigan State. I think it's going to be easily 2 touchdowns probably, and hopefully we can see Braylon Allen do his stuff as well. What was the name of that wide receiver? I wanted to see if I have him.
His last name is DK. It's spelled Dike. First name is Kamir, Chim.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. So, you said DK, and I'm like,
yeah, I know.
I don't know, but yeah. Okay, so I've been pronouncing it Dyke, but apparently it's not that. Shows what I know. Right. But it's your team. That's not fair. But yeah, he is skyrocketed up in the model. He's actually in the top 24 right now for me.
I'm telling you, he's a guy that I think we need to start paying attention to. He had like 180 yards last week.
3.27 yards per team pass attempt this year. 74 receiving yards per game, 31% market share this year, 3.73 PPR points per touch. Like dude's standing out. And I don't know if he's actually going to come out, but he is a part of this class.
Right.
So that is interesting. We'll have to see what he does there. But like I said, he's moved into my top 24, which is pretty interesting and probably pretty spicy for people as well. I just didn't know who you were talking about.
I think,
Quick
yeah,
stock
well,
report
now you know.
for you all. Braylon Allen, are you guys stock up, stock down?
For me, it's definitely stock down. I think he's been less efficient this year, and he still hasn't shown us much in the passing game. So stock down for me, but I'm not like out on him or anything. He's still a Wisconsin running back who's getting tons of stats. I think his yards per attempt right now is down to like 3 point something, which you never like to see that, especially from a Wisconsin back. But I think a lot of that has to do with what happened with their offense, and Paul Christ got fired for it. So we'll see how he bounces back. He's still only 18 years old. I don't know if you guys knew that. They don't mention it on every broadcast ever, but
Yeah, honestly, I think he has to be down a little bit, but for me, I was pretty damn high on him. I kind of expected him to take another step this year, and he really hasn't. And so when I say that I'm down on him or that he's down for me, I think I'm now back to where people already were. I was just higher on him, thinking that he was going to take that next step, and now he's probably at least a top 5 running back in that class, which is probably where most people have him. So I don't think that he's down. I just think that I was just another player that I really thought was going to take a step forward and just truly hasn't.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But I'm interested to see what can happen in that game, and kind of funny that we both chose that game.
Yeah, out of there's 50 games to choose. We both picked Wisconsin, so that's a lock, right? Everybody should be putting their house on that game.
It sure seems like it, or else we're really bad at our jobs. All right, but what about one player? I actually don't. No. I want to finish here because I think it'll be an exciting finish to the pod. So why don't you talk about your Devy player that you want to check out in week 7?
All right, so I couldn't sign off this week without mentioning Georgia's running back Branson Robinson. We all saw the offseason pictures of him looking like a steamroller, but we haven't really got to see him in action until last week when Kendall Milton went down against Auburn. The running duties were split pretty evenly between him and Dawan Edwards. And that man took advantage of that opportunity. He gashed Auburn for 98 yards on only 12 carries. Nearly 70% of his yards were breakaway yards. He had seen a little bit of action prior to this game, but I think the increased volume really helped him to find that stride. Milton should be out again. I don't think they've announced that he's going to be out, but he's got to be out because he had a groin injury. Those tend to linger a bit. They get Vandy this week as 38-point favorites. Vandy is not great against the run. They're currently 89th in the country, giving up 150 yards per game on the ground. I could see Dawan Edwards and Branson Robinson each going for 100 yards on the ground this weekend. So I'm definitely going to be watching that game to hopefully see yet another freshman running back breakout this year. We've already seen the 3 guys we talked about earlier in Singleton, Ott, and Judkins, and then also Amarian Hampton's been great. There's been a few other guys like Ashton Jainty who's been, playing pretty well. This running back class is looking to be really good.
I wouldn't go as far as saying Hampton's been great. He's been okay. No. He started off hot.
Listen,
I don't fallen off since then.
Yes, and I'm not a big Hampton guy either, as I've said on this pod multiple times. But nonetheless, it's certainly a plus for the RB class in general for 2025.
Oh, yeah. Even just getting on the field sometimes is good enough. So, yeah, I'm not trying to hate on him. I'm just saying I don't know if I would call it great. Those other guys, they've been great. And honestly, Branson Robinson might not give this job back. I really think that I didn't see what that was from Lucas, but I missed that part. But he said duty.
Did I say duty?
It was very, very important. Yeah. Okay. So, very important. I'm glad we stopped the show for that. But that's what I was saying. So, Kendall, what the hell's his name?
Milton. Kendall Milton. Yes.
Kendall Milton. I was going to say the player for the Broncos. Kendall Hinton.
Yeah.
Kendall Milton is not very good, and I don't know that if he's actually going to get his job back when it's all said and done. it's kind of one of those things like once the genie's out of the bottle, that kind of thing. If he had been able to stay healthy and do all that, maybe we don't see Branson, early enough. But he's already out. He's dominated in his first game, or like his first big game and everything. So I don't even know if what's going to happen with Milton, if he's even going to come out this year. Like, he was a top 5 player for running backs for a lot of people, and he might not even come out this year. Or if he does, it very well could be another Zamir White, not even like James Cook level kind of player.
Yeah, that's a good Kendall Milton's a good example of Devy take lock. Like, he's just been consistently in the top 4 rounds his entire college career, and really he hasn't done anything to like warrant that ranking. But we'll see, because like you said, Branson Robinson, he could just take the job right away from him, and then at that point he's a transfer candidate.
People just go Georgia. That's all you got to know.
Georgia.
Right? All right, so why don't we talk about my player? Player that I've never really talked about on here, at least. It's Jaden Daniels. No, I'm just kidding. No, I actually want to talk about Hendon Hooker. That's who I want to watch this week, and I figured that Lucas would be pretty excited about that. We might even get him, back on the pod here just by talking about him. But I wasn't overly excited about Hendon Hooker going into the season, and I'm not even saying that like he's that clear QB3 or anything like that, but he is drastic, or like moving up incrementally each week, and I think that he's just doing really well. He's doing better than last year, and now I get that he's a super senior and all that, but the NFL is starved for QB talent right now. And we saw a much lesser player, or at least maybe not much lesser, but a lesser player in Kenny Pickett go in the first round this year, and is already starting QB in the NFL. So I don't think it's that crazy to think that Hendon Hooker could also do the same thing. And I mean, he's playing in the SEC. He's doing amazing things. He has a 70% completion rate, 11.7 adjusted yards per attempt, 10 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. I mean, just about everything you want to see from a QB. And isn't he 175 years old? He's very old. He is a super senior. I'm not saying that he's a perfect prospect. I'm not, like I said, I'm not even saying he's my QB3 in the class, because he's not. But he's moving up slowly but surely each week. And if that continues, he could be the QB3 when it's all said and done. Although Tyler Van Dyke did have a really nice game this past week. So I know. I'm sad. I really liked Van Dyke at the beginning.
Didn't they lose when they were supposed to beat UNC?
It was he threw for 500 yards with no wide receivers. But enough about him. Hendon Hooker, that's who I want to watch this week against a good team. I want to see, what they can do against a good defense, what he can do, and if he can keep on rolling. What do you think, Lucas? And then we'll get to Andy.
Okay.
Absolutely love the pick. Hendon Hooker over Will Levis. Vols by 50. Go Vols.
See, you should have taken Hooker over Will Levis last week on the mock draft.
I agree. I really do agree.
At least you could have
mistakes.
At least you could have had some dignity at the end of it. But here we are now. No, I mean, I talked about Hendon Hooker extensively on the recap this week, and I'm with you. Like, the QB3 in this class is just a mystery right now. Every one of these guys has like their knock against him. But I think really the Hendon Hooker's is just the age. Like, he's going to be 25 next April when the draft comes along. And it's just going to be a matter of whether or not teams overlook that and just say, he's 25. It doesn't, if he's a first round draft pick, he still gets a rookie deal for 5 years. And we know that quarterbacks can play well into their 30s. It's just a matter of, is he really good this year because he's 25 and he's been out of high school for 7 years now? That's what, I think we have to weigh as what's going on. Is he good because he's good, or is he good just because he's a lot older than all these guys? But he's been great, and I love to see it. And I think he's got as much of a case for QB3 as anybody else.
I think, once again, bringing up Kenny Pickett just because it's the most recent, similar player comp, or not comp, but similar situation. Like, his numbers are so much better than Pickett's ever were. And, Pickett was playing in the ACC and Hooker's playing in the SEC. So if I get that he's old, but I don't know that this is a situation like a running back or a wide receiver or whatever, where you learn nuances. Like we see QBs that are, in their 6th year that in the NFL that don't get it. So, I don't know. I think the NFL is so starved for QB talent that it doesn't matter if you get it in your first year, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th or 7th. Like if you get it at some point, they're going to draft you. I'm not saying he's going to be a first round pick, but I don't think it'd be that crazy to think he's a 2nd round pick. And honestly, with some of the first round picks that we've seen in recent years, I don't even think it's that wild to think that he could be a first round pick in the NFL draft. I mean, I know it didn't happen, but people were talking about Malik Willis being, in the top 10 last year or this past year. And obviously it didn't happen, but just the fact that people were talking about it, the fact that people are talking about Will Levis being, a top 10 pick this upcoming year, I don't think it's insane to think that Hendon Hooker could be a first round pick in the NFL draft.
No, I don't think so at all either. I've seen like Jaron Hall, who's like 30, mocked as a first round pick. So why not take a 25-year-old Hendon Hooker?
Exactly. So that's who I'll be watching this weekend. I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great game. I hope that Milroe can be adequate. Like I just want it to be. What's up, Brandon? I just want it to be a good game. We don't need him to be amazing, just good enough, so that we can not see Alabama get blown out by Tennessee. Because even though Lucas wants to see that, I don't think anyone else wants to see that.
I kind of do. I hate Bama.
That's true.
After 15 years, it's coming. It's coming. I'm ready. Balls by 50. Let's go.
They're due. All right, guys. Well, it's been another great pod. We're right around the hour mark. We're doing pretty well. So we appreciate you all listening. We're very excited to be brought to you by Underdog Fantasy and Fantasy Points Media Group. Check us out there. Check us out on the TrueNorth.com. TrueNorthFantasyFootball.com. Make sure you do your pick'ems on Underdog Fantasy. And Lucas, why don't you get us out of here?
All right, y'all, we're outlining players that you want to watch, a game that you want to watch. Aside from Alabama, Tennessee, which is obviously going to be the best game of the weekend, what else are you all looking forward to? Give me one final thought and we'll get out of here.
I mean, balls by 50, that's all I can say. Yeah.
Final thought, I think that it's just like I said earlier, these games are going to be fantastic. This is like the first week where we've seen some actual like top 10 matchups. So I want to see how Michigan stands up against Penn State. I think that's their first test of the season. And then, I think we're all just, itching to see Tennessee, Alabama. That's going to be such a good game, or a huge letdown.
Yeah, I agree. That is a good game. I kind of want to see how Clemson does against FSU. I think FSU's been kind of like a surprise, not amazing or anything, but just a surprise team. And I don't know that Clemson should be ranked 4th overall. I just think that's a little high for a team that's been good enough, not amazing. And so I wonder, I'm not saying it's going to be an upset or anything like that. I just wonder if it's going to end up being a good game and a game to watch.
For sure.
Alrighty, but once again, we appreciate you guys listening. Check all of that stuff out that's on the screen. Check out Andy. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you can hear his Devy recaps. Like I said, it's all great info right after the weekend, and we will be back in your ears in a week. And until then, we're cashing out. See you guys.